Welcome to the Non-Ha audiobook. Voiced by Ava from Clipchamp. Copyright from DieFam. Fiction novel, Egypt. The Temptation of the Dream. Chapter list introduction. Book has a total 22 chapters. Introduce the plot. A strange dream. A call from afar. A journey that unravels destiny. Jean, a young man drowning in poverty and student debt, is haunted by recurring dreams, visions of pyramids and an eerie, supernatural whisper pulling him toward Egypt. Unable to resist the obsession, he embarks on a one-way journey to the land of ancient gods. But what begins as a desperate escape quickly turns into a horror story of apocalyptic proportions. When Jean accidentally awakens a colossal statue buried beneath the secret chamber at Pyramid, a being tied to occult powers and forgotten rituals, he unleashes an ancient darkness that had slumbered for millennia. The ground trembles. Humanity watches in terror as the divine statues move, harvesting souls, turning cities into graves, and tearing civilization apart. As the death toll rises, world leaders respond with cold logic, evacuate only the elite, abandon the rest. In the silence after destruction, only fragments of hope remain. Jean disappears without a trace, his name etched into classified files, suspected of triggering the end. Is he a victim, or the chosen harbinger of doom? Egypt. The Temptation from the Dream is a dark supernatural thriller, blending occult horror with apocalyptic survival and existential dread. This is not just a story. It's a haunting warning whispered from the edge of extinction. Chapter 1. Struggling Days in Paris. Paris, the city of lights, love, and dreams. But for him, a young man freshly graduated from university, it was a place of gloom, suffocating costs, and crushed hopes for the future. The bachelor's degree in his hands was little more than a glorified mousepad in a job market oversaturated with candidates in his field. Thousands of graduates swarmed every rare job opening, like tiny fish lost in a vast ocean of competition. No one cared about the mountain of student debt weighing down on him, so heavy it turned even his sleep into a burden. His family lived in a poor rural town in southern France, where winters were bitterly cold and the land was unforgiving. His aging parents had given everything they had, their calloused hands working tirelessly to send him to school, clinging to the fragile hope of a better future. But that future was now trapped in a cramped, run-down attic in overpriced Paris. That attic, the only shelter he could afford, was tiny, with a ceiling so low that sitting upright meant bumping his head. No kitchen, no heating. In winter, the cold bit into his flesh like a blade. The damp air carried the stench of mold, and the scurrying of rats and cockroaches sent an occasional foul odor wafting through the corners. But at least it was cheap. And, at this moment, cheap was all that mattered. Cheap was his only means of survival in this city. Finally, luck, or perhaps just a fleeting smirk of fate, granted him a job as a kitchen assistant in a restaurant. Every day, he toiled relentlessly, prepping ingredients, scrubbing floors, hauling out the garbage. The dumpster behind the small alley was the final resting place for everything, the scraps of uneaten food and the remnants of his dreams. The restaurant had strict rules. No food was to be taken out, not even from the trash. Many times, he saw perfectly edible meat and vegetables tossed away, but he never dared to take them, fear of losing his job, fear of being cast out from the only place that kept him afloat in this unforgiving city. Every day night, precisely at midnight, he left the restaurant after finishing work. That was also the time when convenience stores slashed prices on soon-to-expire food, cold spaghetti boxes, rock-hard baguettes. All of it became his dinner. Meager, but enough to fill his stomach and keep his fragile dreams alive. But afloat didn't mean truly living. On those bone-chilling winter nights, as he hauled heavy bags of trash into the alley, he would look up at the Parisian sky, clouded, washed in dim yellow streetlights, and let out a sigh. His future was just as bleak as the night above. His life drifted forward in silence, weighed down by exhaustion. Yet amidst it all, one recurring dream refused to fade. At first, it was just a fleeting whisper in his dream. Go to Egypt. Find the pyramid. Beneath it lies the ancient eye. Press it. The door will open. He jolted awake. Egypt? A pyramid? It was nothing more than a mad dream, wasn't it? And yet, the dream kept coming. Back. Over and over. As if something, or someone, was truly calling him from beyond the veil of reality. At first, he ignored it. Who would abandon their job, no matter how miserable, to chase after a nonsensical vision, especially when buried under a mountain of debt? But over time, the dream stopped feeling like a mere dream. It became a voice, a relentless, insistent whisper that gnawed at his mind, pulling him in, luring him. Finally, after years of scraping by, he had managed to save a little. Not enough to clear his debt, but enough to survive for a few months. When the restaurant refused to grant him leave, he gritted his teeth and kept working. But the dream's call grew louder, more unbearable. And so, with no other choice, he decided to quit. That meager paycheck had barely been enough to survive in this overpriced city anyway. He had made up his mind. He would follow the call. He had no idea what awaited him, but he had to find out. And so, on a warm summer morning, he booked a one-way ticket to Cairo, the heart of Egypt. No plan, no connections, no guarantees. It's only a dream. Chapter 2. The 28th Brick. Setting foot in Cairo, he was still unsure if he was chasing a delusion. The city was both chaotic and alive, a whirlwind of honking cars, street vendors calling out their wares, and conversations in a medley of languages. It was a mess, but a vibrant, unstoppable one. As the taxi weaved through narrow streets, heading toward Giza, the land of ancient wonders, his heartbeat quickened. Unconsciously, he gripped his hat tightly, as if holding onto something real to ground himself, to suppress a growing, nameless fear. How could a mere dream lead him so precisely to this place? Had he wasted his savings on nothing more than an illusion? The money he had spent on this trip, he could have used it to pay off even a small portion of his crushing debt. The doubts gnawed at him, repeating in his mind over and over, until the moment he stepped out of the taxi, merging into the stream of tourists flowing toward Egypt's most famous site, the Khufu pyramids. The symbol of an entire civilization loomed before him. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, an enormous stone monolith connecting heaven and earth. Under the blazing sun, its pale golden blocks reflected the light, forcing him to squint. Tourists swarmed the area. Some snapped selfies, some rested in the scarce shade. Others followed tour guides who spun tales of history. No one knew that among them was a man searching for a mythical eye from his dreams. A ridiculous and uncertain. He moved toward the base of the pyramid, as a ghost in the crowd, though no one paid him any mind. His hands brushed against the ancient stones, rough and weathered by time. He searched every crevice, every carving, even pressing his face close to the surface, looking for any sign of the Eye of Egypt. One stone after another. One side of the pyramid, then the other. Time passed. The sun began to set, the crowd thinned. Finally, he slumped onto the sand, sweat soaking his back, a hollow disappointment filling his chest. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. He returned to the hotel, his heart heavy as if he had lost something important. The feeling of being deceived by his own dream made him furious. So stupid, he muttered. I wasted my precious little savings chasing after a foolish illusion. That night, he lay on the hotel bed, no dinner, no phone, just staring silently at the ceiling. Regret, frustration, and self-reproach churned inside him. He mourned the money he had spent, the hard-earned savings of many months. Tears welled up in his eyes. But then, as if following an unbreakable rule, The dream returned. This time, it was clearer than ever. A voice echoed from deep within his mind. The 28th brick. Eastern path. Touch it. He jolted awake, his heart pounding like a war drum, filled with excitement. The 28th brick? Eastern path? He tried to recall. Back at the pyramid, he had checked every stone, every row, every step. But he hadn't seen anything resembling an eye. There was nothing. He was sure of it. Or wait. A thought flashed through his mind like lightning. Could it be that time had erased the mark? Perhaps there had once been an eye carved into the brick, but years of wind, sand, and rain had worn it away. Then what if he dug deeper, scraped off the layer of stone dust? The more he thought about it, the hotter his head burned, as if an ancient secret was waiting to be unearthed. Grabbing his phone, he searched for aerial images of the Great Pyramid. The eastern side. Quickly calculating the height of each stone layer, he estimated the approximate position of the 28th brick. Near the base. Not too high, not too deep. He sprang up, eyes shining with renewed hope. Chapter 3. Beneath the weathered stones. Cairo in the morning was dazzling and noisy. Streams of tourists flooded into Giza, crowding under the scorching sun to marvel at one of humanity's greatest wonders, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. He woke up early, hastily ate breakfast at the hotel, and rushed outside. The dream from the previous night still echoed in his mind, a vague voice calling him to the 28th brick at the pyramid's base. On the way, he stopped by a small roadside shop. An old man had an assortment of trinkets spread out, souvenirs, lighters, old screws, and even some rusty tools. After rummaging through the items for a while, he found what he needed, a small screwdriver. "How much?" he asked. The old man eyed him for a moment before chuckling. 10 Egyptian pounds, young man." He stuffed the tool into his pocket and hurried toward the pyramid. Contrary to the mysterious image from his dream, the reality at the pyramid's base was far from quiet. Children ran around, tourists laughed and snapped photos, and guides spoke endlessly. He took a deep breath, weaving through the crowd toward the eastern base, the place where he believed the sign was hidden. Kneeling down, he ran his fingers along the massive stone blocks. He counted carefully until he reached the 28th brick, a weathered stone that looked no different from the hundreds of others. He glanced around. No one was paying attention. Quietly, he pulled out the screwdriver, took a deep breath, and began scraping the stone surface. Tiny grains of stone dust fell. His hands trembled with anticipation. At first, nothing happened, but then, faint carvings slowly emerged, curved lines, barely visible. He scraped more carefully, revealing a pattern beneath the dust.
An eye.
The more he scraped, the clearer the image became. He looked up, scanning his surroundings. Tourists were still busy with their selfies, lost in the tour guide's monotonous explanations. No one was watching him. No one cared about a man using a screwdriver to scratch at an ancient stone. Everyone was too preoccupied, posing beside the ancient blocks, chatting, laughing. Amid this everyday chaos, he silently bent down and continued clearing away the dust of time from the 28th brick, an action so small, so seemingly meaningless. He gently scraped away the hardened dirt. With each stroke, he held his breath, hoping to uncover something, anything. But no, there was no trace of an ancient Egyptian eye. Only rough scratch marks left by his own hand. Yet, strangely, those very scratches, after a while, unintentionally formed the shape of an eye, a curved arch above, a long line below, and a small circular mark in the center, resembling an eye. It wasn't the eye from his dream, just an illusion he had created for himself, born from stubbornness and desperation. He sat still for a long time, sweat trickling down his forehead under the blazing sun. It felt like a cruel joke played by his own subconscious. The entire trip had been a deception. A foolish dream had led him across half the world, only for him to create a meaningless, clumsy engraving on the stone. In frustration, he clenched his jaw and stabbed the screwdriver into the center of the fake eye, as if trying to shatter the last remnants of his delusion. His action looked like sheer vandalism, an angry man defacing a national monument. Click. A faint sound, so soft, barely there. But to him, it echoed like a thunderclap. A real sound, not his imagination. He froze. Around him, the lively chatter continued. Children playing, adults speaking in different languages. But that sound, he had heard it. And it had come from the stone he just stabbed. A fire ignited in his chest. His eyes widened. His heart pounded wildly. He had just triggered a secret mechanism. It wasn't that time had eroded the eye. It wasn't his imagination. It wasn't a false dream. The dream was real. The feeling of deception and frustration transformed into exhilaration and trembling anticipation. Behind the stone, what lay hidden? An ancient door? A buried mechanism? A truth concealed for thousands of years? He quickly scanned his surroundings. Still, no one was paying attention to him. The world spun on as usual, but he stood on the threshold between the present and something far beyond human understanding. The concealed door behind the eye carving had shifted slightly, just a faint crack, but enough to set his heart racing. Yet, when he looked around, there was no clear entrance. No visible door, no descending staircase, no open corridor. He narrowed his eyes, examining the area around the 28th brick. And then, just a few steps away, he spotted a small moving streak of light near the pyramid's base, where the stone had worn down heavily over time. Unlike the surrounding ancient weathered blocks, this spot had a surface that looked fresher, cleaner, as if it had been moved recently. Though only a thin gap, he clearly saw the subtle shift of a massive stone slab, revealing the edge of some hidden passageway. It wasn't wide enough for casual eye to notice, but it was definitely in the process of opening. The newly exposed surface, untouched by centuries of dust, gleamed slightly under the sunlight, like a beacon leading the way. His breath hitched. A thrill so overwhelming nearly made him laugh out loud. The disappointment and anger from moments ago vanished like mist. There was a secret here, and the dream was real, and he, no one else, had awakened it. He turned back to the 28th brick, to the eye he had unknowingly carved. This time, he didn't use force but pressed lightly on the eye, as if confirming its presence. Click. Another soft sound, lingering slightly longer this time. And he felt it. The friction of stone shifting, ancient gears grinding, reawakening after millennia of slumber. He rushed back to the faint crack. As expected, the stone slab had moved further, widening the gap. His throat was dry. Excitement and fear intertwined, sending a shiver down his spine. The hidden door had shifted once more. Returning to the 28th brick, he pressed the eye a third time, firmly now, yet still with reverence. Meanwhile, he slung his backpack over his shoulders, preparing to step into something no one but him could see. At last, the secret entrance fully revealed itself, just wide enough for him to crouch and slip inside. It was concealed so masterfully that none of the nearby tourists noticed, hidden within a shadow cast by an overhanging rock. A secret passage, awakened by him alone. He switched on his flashlight. The beam illuminated ancient carvings covering the walls of the narrow corridor, hieroglyphs, bas-reliefs depicting Egyptian rituals, daily life, and warfare. The colors red, gold, blue had faded but still retained their ancient vibrancy under the light. As he stepped forward, one question echoed in his mind. The Eye of Egypt, what does it truly mean? In his dreams, it had always called as a sign. But what exactly did it represent? He took out his phone and connected to the internet. Luckily, the 7G signal was still weakly present inside the pyramid. He typed in the keyword, Eye of Horus, meaning The first result appeared on the screen. The Eye of Horus, also known as Wadjet, is an ancient symbol representing protection, royal power, and restoration. According to Egyptian mythology, Horus lost an eye in his battle with Seth, but it was healed by the god Thoth. Since then, the eye has become a symbol of healing and wholeness. He scrolled further. It is also a symbol of divine knowledge, representing the cosmic gaze, and is often inscribed on tombs to protect the soul of the deceased on their journey to the afterlife. His eyes gleamed with amazement. It was not just an eye. It was a gateway to ancient knowledge, perhaps even a power that transcended human limits. The corridor ahead grew wider. He's still walking. The walls stretched higher. The inscriptions became denser. Some sections had been erased by time, yet he could still discern traces of a glorious civilization where great secrets lay waiting to be awakened. Chapter 4. The Eye, a symbol of knowledge. The emblem of the great god Horus, the guide who leads souls to the afterlife. The hieroglyphs covering the corridor seemed to be telling that very story, yet he couldn't understand them. He couldn't read ancient Egyptian, nor did any instant translation appear before his eyes like in the movies. Only when Egyptologists arrived could the true meaning of these inscriptions be deciphered. But for now, he could only move forward, guided by instinct and curiosity. Cautiously, he ventured deeper, sweeping his flashlight across the walls while a question nagged at his mind. With all the modern technology, geological scanners, ground-penetrating radar, how had no one ever discovered this secret door? How had the treasure of the Great Pyramid of Khufu remained so perfectly hidden? The thought filled him with even greater curiosity, but also a creeping sense of unease. Suddenly, his steps halted. A memory surfaced, something he had read before. Egyptian tombs were always guarded by deadly traps. Falling stones, poison arrows, spiked pits, even lethal gas, designed to protect the deceased from intruders. A chill ran down his spine. He swallowed hard. Cold sweat seeped through his shirt. I'm going to die here. If I go any further, I might not make it back. I should turn around. Fear surged through him, awakening his survival instincts. He turned back, leaving behind the mysterious carvings, the unexplored corridors, and ran toward the exit. As he neared the entrance, his breath caught. The symbol of the Egyptian eye appeared clearer than ever, not faded by time, not chipped like the surrounding walls. It remained intact, staring straight at him, as if watching the intruder who had dared to step into this forbidden place. Holding his breath, he reached out and pressed the eye symbol one last time, then bolted outside. Behind him, the stone door began to close, the grinding sound of pulleys and ancient gears echoing through the silent, eerie space. He heard it all too clearly, as if each sound marked the moment the secrets within were buried once more. Stepping outside, the golden sunlight struck his eyes, forcing him to squint. He collapsed onto the ground, gasping for breath, his heart pounding in his chest. Thankfully, reason had awakened just in time. If he had taken just a few more steps, what awaited him might not have been treasure, but death. Even in the bright daylight, his face remained pale, as if all the blood had been drained from his body. Lowering his head, he cursed himself under his breath. What a stupid idea. I nearly got myself killed because of my own excitement. Sweat drenched his back, a lingering fear clinging to him. The sensation of being watched, of something lurking in the ancient darkness, still haunted his mind. But over time, the fear began to fade, like a nightmare that had passed. That night, he returned to his hotel in silence, telling no one about what had happened. Sleep eluded him. Only when the first rays of morning sunlight streamed through the window did his thoughts finally settle. The next morning, after careful consideration, he made a decision. He would go to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, the authority responsible for overseeing and preserving Egypt's historical heritage. There's no need for me to search for treasure on my own, but if I'm the first to discover that secret door, Surely the Egyptian government will acknowledge it and offer some kind of reward. That was his reasoning. Egypt had long encouraged locals and tourists to collaborate with archaeologists, especially when it came to discoveries involving national heritage. If reported through the proper channels, one could receive official recognition or even financial rewards and prestige. His fear had subsided. Now, only nervous anticipation remained, along with a glimmer of hope that the door he had found could be an unprecedented discovery. At the headquarters of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, an old, grand building in the heart of Cairo, he filled out a form for citizens and tourists reporting archaeological findings. The official handling his report was a weary-looking man, typing on his computer while lazily scanning the document. But when he mentioned the 28th stone with the eye symbol, with a mechanical unlocking mechanism, the official suddenly looked up, his gaze sharp for a brief moment. Then, regaining composure, he spoke in an indifferent tone. "Do you have any photos or videos? Egypt gets plenty of tourists with overactive imaginations." His mind flashed back to that moment, the rush of adrenaline, the exhilaration, the sweat-soaked fear. Even now, he could still feel the weight of an unseen presence watching from the ancient shadows, deep, ominous, and suffocating. Every footstep, every sound echoing in that tomb had carried a silent warning. They needed proof. His throat went dry. In that instant, he realized, when he had discovered the unlocking mechanism, he had been so overwhelmed with excitement that he had completely forgotten to record anything. No photos, no videos, just his memory. The official shook his head, unable to hide a faint smirk of disdain. "You know," he said, "we've conducted 3D scans, ground-penetrating radar surveys, dozens of times over the years. And we've found nothing. So tell me, how could a foreign tourist possibly discover something that hundreds of local and international archaeologists have failed to see?" The official closed the file, his tone indifferent. "Without evidence, this is nothing more than the imagination of a European tourist obsessed with Indiana Jones." He left the office, seething with frustration and disappointment. But deep down, he knew he had to go back. This time, to record proof. Without it, that door would remain buried under doubt, and what he had seen would become nothing more than a meaningless personal memory. Jumping into a taxi, he told the driver to take him straight to the Giza pyramids. When they arrived, he pulled out his wallet, handing over the fare, each Egyptian pound feeling like a wound to his heart. His hands trembled with regret. Just a few days in Egypt, with food, hotels, and transport, had already drained a good portion of his savings. He couldn't afford to stay much longer. If he lingered in Cairo, the costs would soon become an unbearable burden. The Egyptian sun was as relentless as ever, scorching everything beneath it. Tourists bustled about, chatting, laughing, snapping pictures, unwitting spectators to his solitary race against time. He pushed through the crowd, heading straight for the Great Pyramid of Khufu, his steps frantic, caught between urgency and anticipation. At last, he reached his destination, the 28th stone. Without hesitation, he pulled out his phone, setting it to record. Then, with a mix of frustration and determination, he pressed his finger firmly against the engraved eye symbol, the secret he had discovered the day before. Or rather, the symbol he had carved himself with a screwdriver. Everything was captured, his figure, his hand pressing forcefully against the mysterious symbol. A soft click echoed. He immediately rushed to the stone crevice where the hidden door had once shifted. As expected, the massive rock began to move, revealing the old passageway. The camera continued rolling, capturing every second, the grinding of stone, the falling dust, the faint glow of light filtering through the dim opening. One hand gripping his phone, the other switching on a flashlight, he crouched and slipped through the gap, venturing deeper inside. Reaching a wider corridor, he swept his light across the space. Ancient inscriptions emerged from the darkness, worn down by time, yet exuding an indescribable mystique. Slowly, he panned the camera, ensuring everything was recorded. The walls, the carvings, every intricate detail. Then, wasting no time, he turned back the way he had come. Pressing the eye symbol once more, the heavy stone pulley system groaned in protest, its echoes filling the narrow chamber. As the door slowly slid shut, he barely managed to crawl out in time, his clothes now dust-streaked. The video was still recording. He quickly stopped the footage and saved the file carefully. One copy uploaded to the cloud, another stored on his device. Without delay, he hailed a ride back to the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, phone in hand, carrying undeniable proof of his discovery. He couldn't begin to imagine the officials' reaction upon watching the video: shock, regret, or stubborn denial. No matter what, this time, the truth could not be ignored. Chapter 5. You again? The Egyptian official barely glanced at the newly submitted file, his voice laced with boredom and a hint of mockery. Do you have any proof this time, monsieur? He deliberately stretched the last word, his tone dripping with sarcasm, his eyes filled with skepticism. Jean Moreau, dark brown hair, eyes as deep as the Sahara night, remained unfazed. He said nothing. Instead, he silently placed his phone and the report detailing the discovery onto the desk, his gaze locked onto the official's face, waiting to see how his expression would change once undeniable truth unfolded before him. Jean calmly pulled out a chair and sat down across from the man, arms crossed, a faint smirk playing at the corner of his lips as if to say, "Watch." Then tell me again who's delusional. Still silent, Jean simply raised a finger and pointed at the phone screen, where a paused video was waiting to be played. The device was unlocked. The official hesitated for a moment before pressing play. Leaning forward, he watched as Jean's hand reached out to press the ice symbol engraved on the 28th stone. His expression shifted instantly. A flood of memories rushed through his mind. He knew this pyramid well. There was no such symbol there. He frowned, pausing the video to zoom in. The carving was indeed fresh, the edges sharp, as if it had only been etched a few days ago. He resumed playback. Then, as the massive stone door emerged from the darkness, shifting with a deep, grinding sound, the official involuntarily muttered, "My God, it's real." Audiobook is end here. Want to know what Jean found inside the pyramid? Buy book on Amazon.